Hey, what's going on, guys? Threat Level Midnight here, and today we're going to take a look at how I have my duty rifle set up. You might notice that there's some things on here that you might not prefer. This is an issued gun, so I do have some limitations. And also for the type of work that I do, this is what works for me. And over the last handful of years, I just kind of tuned my equipment to the things that I do, which generally involves serving a couple warrants a week, and maybe from time to time doing like a long range, like tracking, like either through the desert or through like a wooded area where some higher power scope might come in handy. But let's go ahead and go to the bench and take a look at how I have this thing set up. So getting into the gun itself, this is just a SIG M400. It's one of the first generations of the M400s. So it came with just a carbine length quad rail and a regular standard stock and a standard A2 grip. You guys see that I kind of left that alone too. Nothing special about it, but I have probably right around 7,000 rounds on this gun, and it functions very reliably. I've only had a couple of malfunctions with it, which have generally been because of the type of ammo that I've been using out of it. Some of the federal government partners have specific training ammo with a powder coating on it. And if you run a lot of rounds through your guns, like that powder coating can get into your chamber and kind of make the bolt really sticky. All right, guys, so we'll start off just like grand thumb from tip to butt here. So to start off, the barrel, the muzzle device on here is just going to be an A2 birdcage. Nothing special there. I know there's better stuff out there, but I would prefer not to be shooting indoors next to someone that's running a big break. Just a matter of preference for me, and I prefer not to blow everyone else's eardrums out when we're shooting, or God forbid we have to shoot this thing inside of a house. Looking at the barrel overall, it's a 14.5-inch barrel. He said this is an issued gun, so it is a registered SBR. A lot of people have preferences between like 13.7, 11.5, 14.5. You know, to me, I don't think that it makes a big difference. If you know what you're doing with the gun, I prefer a little bit of extra length on it anyways. So 14.5 government contour barrel, and it works just fine for me. Moving into the handguard, it's going to be a Midwest extended free float, so it just kind of wraps the A-frame. You notice that I do have an A-frame. That's one of those limitations that I was talking about, and I don't mind having it. But this Midwest free float rail, I like Midwest stuff. I'm not a huge snob when it comes to brands and such, and I've used a lot of Midwest stuff in the past, and it's been bomb-proof for me, so I like to stick with it. It's nice and slim. Before this, I was running a Midwest quad rail, and I'll tell you what, there is a difference between running a quad and then running like a slim, like M-LOK rail, and the difference is like how well your rifle mitigates heat. So when you run a quad rail, and hang on, I'll grab it and show you guys what I was running before. All right, so this is the quad rail I was running before, and actually this is almost how I had my work rifle set up before. Running a red dot and a magnifier, Streamlight Pro Tac off an Arasaka offset. But you could fire any number of rounds through an upper like this, and this thing just eats up the heat. You're not going to torch your hands on it. It just dissipates everything like a radiator. So when you switch to like an M-LOK, and anyone can attest to this that has anything that fires any number of rounds through their gun, is your handguards heat up so fast. So I kind of do miss the quad rail. I like the look of the quad rail, but it saved me a little bit of weight switching to a shorter M-LOK setup instead of this quad. Moving on to the pistol grip, I just left an A2 pistol grip. I don't mind them. I've never had a problem with them. As long as you have that little plug right there that keeps your finger from getting chewed up by your lower receiver, I don't mind them a bit. An initial modification that I did make to this gun, though, is I took off SIG's dual or ambi magazine release, and you can see that it's this nice big paddle here, and I know everyone loves to have ambi everything, but I'll tell you what, when you have a huge paddle like that, when you sling this gun, if you need to put someone in handcuffs, or if you need to just sling the gun in general to do some sort of task, it would engage that magazine release on my gun belt or on my plate carrier, and it would just spit a mag out pretty much every single time. So I was like, okay, a couple training days, and I'm like, this thing has got to go. So to me, I thought this was just too big. There is some ambi mag releases that I do like, but this one's just not one of them. So I don't personally recommend that one. Moving on to the stock, I've always been a fan of the Voltor's and iMod. I don't really use the storage tubes in the cheek rest for anything. but I do like how wide the cheek well is. I'm also a big fan of like the B5 enhanced SOP mod stocks and stuff like that too. So this works for me. The sling is a Viking Tactics. You know, when I was in the Marine Corps, we were issued these slings. Got a nice padded portion right here, plenty of adjustment, really rugged metal buckles on it, so you can tighten this thing down in a hurry if you need to. And I have it set up on QDs here, so if I need to pull it off, I can. You'll notice that I have a hand stop on here. Not so big into the foregrips anymore. This one's made by Ergo. And it just keeps the gun real slim, and it keeps my hand indexed just right if I'm going to initiate any of the buttons right here for my white light or for my IR. It just keeps my hand right in that perfect position with the hand stop right here. So I do like that. So moving on to some of the accessories that I have on here, you'll notice that the light is the ProTac 2.0 rail mount. I got it when it first came out because it would accept the crane plugs in the back. Now Streamlight has since come out with a new light that accepts these, and I'll probably switch to that because this one is really bulky. And if you've used this before, or if you have any experience on it, you'll know that this thing is mostly flood and not a lot of throw. And for the size of the head of this light, you'd think that it would throw very far, but it just doesn't. And it's pretty much all lumen, no candela. And then I also have a TLR VIR2. I don't shoot a ton under night vision, so a lot of you guys are gonna be like, well, I have, you know, a D-Ball A3 or a D2 or a MAL, but this is not an issued piece of equipment, and I don't shoot under night vision that much. So, but I did want the capability to do it. So you'll notice that I have the Villain weapon system, the external focusing lens on here, and pretty much that's just a little lens that focuses your IR illuminator coming out of this thing. Because just like this light here, the IR illum out of the VIR2 was pretty much all flood, and it wasn't focused at all. So when you put this thing on here, it tightens the beam way up. And what that did was it took away the shadow that you get from the barrel. It was so much flood that you'd have a huge barrel shadow on everything. So huge recommendation for the EFL from Villain Weapon Systems if you are running the VIR2. And you'll also notice that I do have it wired up with my light on a dual switch. So all the lighting stuff here is pretty much, it's all Streamlight, but I have a Cloud Defensive little housing for my light. So my lead button right here is going to activate white light, and then my rear button can activate the IR if I have it turned on, but I just leave it into off setting. The switches from Streamlight are about as rugged and reliable as any other brand I've ever used. I've used a handful of others, and it's been okay so far. It's been just fine. I've had Surefires go out, lights of course, you know, but I do like having the dual switch capability right here where I can just white light override and then still access my IR if I want to. So moving on to the optics, my offset red dot is just a Holosun 407. I didn't need the adjustable reticle, so I wasn't going to go up to the 500 series, but it's on an Arasaka offset mount. And what I like about the Arasakas is it chalks the optic far enough out where it clears my lights and it clears everything else. Some of the other 45-degree mounts keep it too tucked in, and it's just hard to get behind it. So I don't want to have to add a spacer or anything to this, but the Arasaka keeps it plenty far out where you can have a clean sight picture through your red dot. And moving on to the glass, it's the Vortex Razor HD Gen 3 1 to 10. You might think like, hey, the 1 to 10 is a little bit overkill for, you know, police work kind of stuff. But if you think about what we do, like, hey, I need to identify things. More than anything else, I just need to identify things. I don't need to make 600-yard shots, although this gun is capable of it, and I do that regularly. But what I do need to know is what's in the window. What's that person holding in their hand? Is this person still a threat to me? And I find that this scope really does everything that I need it to do. It's in the American Defense AD Recon M mount, and it puts it at a great height for me. The ADM mounts are pretty much bomb-proof. I love these things. I've pulled it off before and it returned to zero exactly where I want it. I didn't have to make any adjustments. And I've seen a couple videos on YouTube too where there's some comparisons between mounts, and this one always came out on top, and I can vouch for it because I have pulled it off. And it did return exactly to zero. Then I just have a flip up. It's a Midwest iron sight right here. just in case I need to wrench this thing off real quick, but it does have throw levers on it. Charging handle, BCM gunfighter. I'm not a fan of the huge, I mean, it's not 2000 anymore, so no one uses the Badger latches anymore. But I do like having a little bit of extra something here over the stock latch. Not so much on the ambi. I don't really care for the ambi latches. I don't need it. Haven't found a need for it yet. But moving on to the trigger, just your stock mil-spec trigger. There's nothing, no thrills about it. I'm gonna leave that as is, and I have no problem running this thing fast. You know, and I shoot this gun a lot. I shoot it in competitions. I shoot it at training days. I shoot a lot of rounds through this thing all the time, and I think that's the most important thing. Is like you need to bond with your guns. You need to find out which piece of equipment works for you. How do you want it all set up, and it really comes down to training with it. So I'm a huge proponent of shooting matches. I shot a match with this thing 2 days ago. It ran great, you know, and because I have offset red dot and the 1 to 10 on there, it made a lot of the stages a lot easier than it could be. And a lot of people were running like red dots and magnifiers or just red dots, but this thing really picks up the speed. And on a side note, I will say that you don't need the offset red dot. It's just kind of a luxury item at this point because this thing's 1 power, or the Razor HD's 1 power is a true 1 power, and the reticle does get daylight bright in here, which is really nice. But I like to keep my lever indexed up here, and it just keeps it at 4 power. So when I rotate between the two, I already know that this is just going to be at 4 power as long as my lever is facing straight up. I could talk forever about the VIR2 and the Razor HD Gen 3. I'll probably do separate videos on those if you guys are interested. But that's basically a rundown of how my rifle's set up, and let me know what you guys think.